This morning, we're going to hear from author Dr. Angela Sadler Williamson. Dr. Williamson is an award-winning independent filmmaker, speaker, and adjunct instructor in the Communication Studies Department at Concordia University Irvine. Dr. Williamson has over 25 years of experience in the broadcast television, cable advertising, healthcare, financial, municipal government, and higher education industries. Her former roles include producer and copywriter for the Orange County News Channel, Fox 11 Television, Fox Sports West, and Prime Ticket. In December 2018, she released her award-winning documentary about her cousin, Rosa Parks, entitled My Life with Rosie. I saw it the other night. It's really a treat. I think we're going to see some of it this morning, I hope. Her first book is entitled Women Who Illuminate. Please help me welcome Dr. Angela Sadler Williamson.
I'm sorry, I won't be able to show you a little bit because I didn't pull it up, but I will tell you where you could get a 5-minute preview online of the documentary towards the end of my talk today. It's such a pleasure to be here. In fact, I never envisioned that I would actually write a book. And then after I wrote the book, then people told me, oh, you're supposed to promote it. I'm like, oh my goodness, I just came off of a 2-year film festival run, and I was completely shocked. So today, what I'd like to do is, yes, I'm going to talk a little bit about the book, because I definitely want you to go and buy it, but I'm also going to tell you what led to me actually writing this book, because I focus on putting together this entire documentary. From Women Who Illuminate. This is the actual first part of the foreword that I write for this incredible book, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it towards the end. Our journey is made of moments. They vary from small to large. When I reflect on my Life with Rosie journey, I realized it was a lot of small moments that led to the one large moment that changed my entire path. So when I started producing My Life with Rosie, because a lot of people ask me, how did this documentary get started? Well, I have to be honest with him now that I've written this book and had self-reflection time. I have to be honest and say it really started with self-pity. Because at the time I started this documentary, I had been part of this family. I married into the family of Rosa Parks. I had been part of this family for well over 20 years. But a few things were happening in my life that I just thought, oh, you know, woe is me. We have those things. We think they're bigger than what they are. So you'll probably think that today. Oh, my goodness, that was all that she was going through. But for me at the time, it was really, really huge. So a few things that was happening. I left my full-time job at Fox 11. That, to me, was, I had hit the peak, the pinnacle of my career. I started in cable news and then ended up at Fox 11 TV, where I served many roles. And so I actually was at one company, but because of my position as sales marketing producer, I worked for Fox 11, My Network TV. Do you have that? No, not, well, what do they call it? Yeah, it was My Network TV. And then also Prime Ticket and Fox Sports West. So I don't know if you have a Fox Sports here. So I did all of their promos for those stations that were tied with advertisers. But I always had this desire to become a college professor, because being the first in my family to go through and get a doctorate, and since then I do have a cousin who's a lawyer, so we consider her a doctor too, but being the first of that generation to get that, I wanted to go back to higher ed, because to me, without that education, there's no way I would have ended up in the #2 market, because I didn't have connections. All I had was what I got from higher ed. So I left Fox 11 in 2007 and decided the next step for me would be to teach. Well, I thought it would be an easy path for me. I mean, why not? I'm already in the industry. I'm friendly, so I'll just work my way up. I did it before. Okay, of course, I'm almost 15 years older, but I'm thinking I had that same energy I had right after college. And so I started the adjunct track. And a year into that adjunct track, I knew I was going to eventually go back to get my doctorate. I started that doctoral journey and thought, I'm doing the right things, I'm taking the right steps. And we all think that. When we're trying to do something, we're doing the right thing because it's what we know. Well, what I didn't really understand is how higher education works. And it doesn't quite work like entertainment. So by the time I get to 2015, I am still a part-time adjunct instructor. Now, though, I have a doctorate, but I have a loan that I could buy a small house somewhere else if I wanted to. So everything was not turning out. So at that point, I was in this, I call it an emotional pit. Now, I had done some things in between, which promo now is in the book that you'll get after. But those things didn't work out because my heart was always to educate people. So how I get to starting this documentary was, when things happen in your life, you think it couldn't possibly get any worse. And for me, it did. It was the passing of my father-in-law. And I have been very blessed to have this phenomenal in-law that supported my educational journey. And that's just because I married into the family of Rosa Parks, so they appreciate education. And so when he passed away, my husband said, because there's a transition that I made in between there that's discussed in the book, and at that point I was completely jobless. So my husband said, you know what, can you do me a favor? Can you help me plan my father's memorial service? And I said, absolutely. And in planning that memorial service, I would go back to my love of video, and I would say that would be one of the moments that started to change my life. It was in that moment that I realized, although my father-in-law had been with us and had always come over to our house for our holiday dinners. That's one of the benefits when you are the one that's known in the family that can cook, you host. And he had been there and he had shared stories, but I realized when I was doing his memorial video that I didn't really know the man. He was so humble. I found out one thing, that he was part of the 1970s jazz movement in Southern California, where he actually made an album. I didn't know that. And so in going and learning things about him, I thought, oh my goodness, okay, a couple things. Professionally, I need to boost that CV. So for people who aren't in higher ed, CVs like the resume, I need to boost that. But personally, as a mother, I now learn how important it is to capture my son's oral histories. So what should I do? Maybe I should start capturing the oral histories from the Williamson side of the family, because everything that I learned as a little girl about Rosa Parks, they were telling me quite different stories. It was a different kind of history. So how did I get into this amazing family? PowerPoint time. On May 2nd, 1998, that would be the second time I would meet who I'm now calling Cousin Rosie. Cousin Rosie, she attended our wedding, and believe it or not, I am actually there as the bride, but because I have an esteemed guest, no one cared about me. They all stopped to look up into the balcony, and you don't see me. I'm next to that handsome man right there. I am really there. But that was another key defining moment for me, was that, oh my goodness, I'm now part of a family that has this incredible legacy. Now, I will be honest with you, the family was telling me when I started dating my husband in 1995 and started meeting the aunts, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but started meeting them, they said, oh yeah, Cousin Rosie. And I'm like, who is this Cousin Rosie? They're like, oh, Rosa Parks. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm giving this man a hard time trying to date me, and your cousin is Rosa Parks? Yes, and you know she attends all the special events, and I'm thinking, right, she's going to attend my event because she at that point lived in Detroit. So I'm thinking, oh no, she's not going to attend my event. Well, I was completely wrong. This was, I mentioned the second time I met her. Well, the first time I met her was when she handed me one of my most treasured possessions today, a book autographed from her that welcomed me to the family. It's called, we're all readers, so you want to get a short book, and it's a perfect gift book too. It's called A Quiet Strength. It's one of the last books that she had written. And so when she gave this to me, I'm looking a little dumbfounded there because I'm thinking, and these are the games, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is a mother of the civil rights movement, and she's at my shower, and she's playing shower games, and she's trying to win. The mother of the civil rights movement. And so, you know, at this time, a lot of times too, we never know where our life is going to take us. So in 1998, I'll let you know a little bit, I was already working as a producer. I was at the Orange County News Channel. I was going back to get my master's at this time. So at this time, I'm not realizing what's going on, but I'm sitting next to one of my heroes. I mean, the only thing you could have done to just make this like the perfect day is to have Oprah Winfrey on the other side. So this was like the best day of my life. But I didn't realize that Cousin Rosie really meant that I was part of that family because she saved these photos, and when she passed away and the son of Warren Buffett bought the collection, these photos are now in the Library of Congress. Yes, yes. So, I mean, these are just things that, these are moments that I'm not realizing because, of course, I realize it after I write the book because it's self-reflection. But, you know, this is me with Rosa Parks, and I'm like, oh, wow, my hero right here. But this photo is now in the Library of Congress. I mean, of all things, I never would have imagined. So, you know, life would go on, and it would go on. So 1998, she would come to the wedding. I met her the month before at the bridal shower. She would pass away in 2005. And as I was telling you, I was at that point, I was making that transition, moving on to, ended up at Fox, then left and went and started. I thought I'd be, you know, in my mind, I'm on the fast track to tenured professorship. No, I wasn't. But in 2015, when it all in my life for me started crashing down and I started to think about what I needed to do and start this documentary, a couple things were really important to me. First, making sure I capture all of my family members. So how do I get to this part? Well, I first get to this part because after I told my husband that I was going to do this documentary, and he figured, well, you know what, let's just give her a little bit of a lifeline here. And he said, okay. You know, he supported me in that. And the next step was to use my Aunt Carolyn as my muse because she was the one, and she still is in the city of Detroit, that's carrying on Rosa Parks' legacy there. So what I wanted to do is I thought, oh, this will be really great to shoot the entire family in the original bus. And so in that original bus, the Henry Ford Museum bought that original bus. Now, to find out how they got the original bus and find out what the condition of that original bus is actually in my documentary because I was completely blown away. But what happened was when I called them and told them what I was doing and said I wanted to do a documentary on the Williamson side of the family, Rosa Parks' cousin, can I make arrangements? They were so kind to me. And I had always loved museums, and we take my son to museums all the time. But, you know, now I realize the good people that work in museums because they will, if you're doing something, they will be as supportive as possible. And the Henry Ford Museum was. So what I did was, at this point, a few things happened. So I'm showing you what is called a production still. I want to shoot at the Henry Ford Museum. I also happen, and this is because my husband came across a book, The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks by Dr. Jean Theo-Harris. I also read her book, and in reading her book, I realized that all of the information that the family was telling me over the years, because I needed to make sure everything was factual, all that information was actually true because Dr. Jean Theo-Harris confirmed this in this book. And this book that my husband found for me that she had written, I look in the back and guess who one of the contributors would be? My father-in-law, who never mentioned it. So she autographs the book and says, "Thank you so much for helping me with this book." And so I reach out to her and tell her I'm thinking about this documentary. And she says, and I said, "Would it be okay to interview you for it?" And she said, "Absolutely." And so she was the game changer for me because originally I was going to take a camera and actually shoot it myself, and I don't edit. And I've mentioned this already this week in Iowa City, so I'll mention it again. Okay, that's probably one of the classes I did not do well on was editing. So I was not going to edit it, but I had plenty of friends who knew about it that would come on board. So, but Dr. Jean Theo-Harris is a game changer because her book won a 2014 NAACP Image Award. So when she came on board, I knew I needed to take this up a level. And that's where you see, that's Tom Almanzar. He does a lot of things for A&E, but I had to reach out to my friends from the industry and ask them if they would help me, and they all came on board. So without my friends and those contacts, this documentary, that's it's been in 16 film festivals and won 16 awards, would never have happened. So Tom is here with me in Michigan. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get 4 generations of Williamsons together. That's 4 generations of Rosa Parks family. And we happen to do that with the help of my Aunt Carolyn. My Aunt Carolyn, and I don't know, do we have a pointer here? Oh, yay. My Aunt Carolyn is sitting here. Okay. Here's something that you can now take to your next cocktail party, family dinner, the next holiday dinner, or just if you want to go have coffee with friends. This is the original bus seat that Rosa Parks was arrested in. The Life magazine photo of her on the other side of the bus is not where she was arrested. It was just the better photo op. Also, where my 2 aunts are sitting right there, this is Aunt Carolyn, Aunt Loretta, that is actually the black section of the bus. So a lot of times when you learn, it's because you learn she didn't give up her seat to a white man. Well, what happened here is in Alabama, if someone was coming in and you were still seated and then you were in the black section, you still had to get up. And one person came in after she was working that day. And so what happened was the person sitting next to her, which is where Aunt Loretta is, he got up. But Cousin Rosie sat down and said, "I'm not getting up." So when she did not get up is what caused the arrest and everything. Now, insider track, and fact number 2. She and the bus driver had already had an altercation once. He had already thrown her off the bus. So she's walking into a situation that already could lead to negative circumstances. Things that I realized I never learned in my history book, but I was hearing this from Aunt Carolyn, and then Dr. Jean Theo-Harris confirmed it when she did all of her research in her book. And so at that point, it was important to make sure that Aunt Carolyn mentioned the correct seat. So when this video, now in 2015 when we're shooting this, in the back of my mind, this video is going to go to education. It will go into higher ed and secondary education. I wasn't thinking primary at the time, that they will know the truth of how this happened. And so they could show this in women's history, Black history, in American history. They could show this as the truth of what really happened. So here's why it was important for me to make sure personally, okay? It was important for me to make sure that I capture my relatives, especially my relatives, the older relatives, is that since this documentary has been made, we've already lost Cousin Jack. So what I do is when I talk to people, I tell them I am extremely blessed to be married into the family of Rosa Parks, but we all have oral histories of our family that you never want to wait until it's too late to capture. Because that's what I learned when I was making the memorial video for my father-in-law. And that's what I continue to learn as we are losing our relatives, is that it's important to make sure. And in the documentary, he really does share some personal things about Cousin Rosie. And that's why it was just so important for us to do that. So I do this documentary, available on Amazon Prime. I do this documentary with the intention of building my CV, and I thought, oh, this will be nice. I'll take this documentary and I'll tour universities and colleges. Great way to network, and hopefully one day I'll become that tenured professor. What happened was, after it was done, and it actually took us 2 years to finish, so in 2017, Tom, the editor, and the lady who composed the music, and Dr. Jean Theo Harris asked me if I would consider going into film festivals. And I told them, absolutely not. There's no way I can get into Sundance or Tribeca or even the Palm Springs Film Festival, which is really an hour from my house. This is too small. My budget was too small. We funded this ourselves. There's no way I could compete with, big Hollywood. I know that. And they said, no, Angela, you need to go online and do some research. And they gave me a couple of social media platforms to look at. So think of this as a Facebook for independent filmmakers wanting to get their videos and their shorts out. So one of the things that I did was I went on to 2 platforms, Without a Box and Film Freeway, and I looked at them, and I looked at and opened it up and found out there are literally tens of thousands of film festivals I had no idea about, which should be somewhat embarrassing for me since I'd already been in the industry for so long. I had no idea. But you know what, to save face just a little bit, I was actually working on that dissertation for a long time. So I was out of it for quite some time. So this is how it gets into the film festival run. So when it gets into the film festival run, and the very first film festival it was in, which I applied in November, and literally within a week, I had heard that it was accepted into its first film festival, I was so glad. It was close to home. It was a Culver City Film Festival, and it actually won the grand prize there. And this movie poster is old. It's from earlier this year. I mean, I have a total of 16 film festivals, so that movie poster needs to be redone. But when I started winning, an organization that I am part of, it's an organization that actually started in Mount Pleasant, Iowa. It has its 150th anniversary this year, PEO International. And one of my sisters in PEO said, you know what? I think we should put this in our magazine, The Record. And it's a magazine that goes out to PEOs internationally and nationally all over the country. And I said, okay, why not? So Mary Jo Fowler writes this article and gets into the PEO Record, and the president's wife from Iowa Wesleyan University, she sees it, and she asked me to come to Iowa Wesleyan University in March 2019 as part of their Bell Bab Mansfield Symposium. And at the time I didn't realize they choose you as an award recipient. So at that symposium, I spend days on campus and I give a keynote speech. And after that keynote speech, a young lady comes up to me from Women Who Illuminate. Receiving the Belle Babb Mansfield Award was never on my professional or personal life plan. But it took that experience to help me realize I was, in fact, fulfilling my heart's desire. After the ceremony, a lovely woman came up to me and told me how much I encouraged her, and she gave me a card and a book entitled Women Who Impact. She told me to read the note when I got back home. Denise McCormick's note encouraged me by telling me that my story should be in her publisher's next book, Women Who Illuminate. And she would help me make that happen. She even quoted my advice when she presented the opportunity to me by writing, "As you shared this morning in the student-led panel discussion, the worst I can hear is no. I couldn't say no to a person sharing my own advice." So that led to one of the many chapters in Women Who Illuminate, who actually the entire focus is based on Jack Canfield's Chicken Soup for the Soul, but geared towards women. This is the 5th in Kate Butler's books in her series. And so when she suggested that, I talked to Kate Butler herself, and is an extremely incredible lady, and told her that I was interested, but I didn't know quite what I should do. And she said, "Well, I think you should tell your story of how you got Rosa Parks to a mass audience to change America's view of one of our most beloved heroes." And in that part, she said, just write a chapter to be included with these other 29 phenomenal women. So I write this chapter that's called How Telling Myself Yes Led to an Award-Winning Documentary, and I send it over to her. And then she asked me to come and speak at her Dare to Dream conference that she has in Philadelphia, and actually it was Delaware. And before that conference and before I was supposed to speak, she told me, she said, "You know what? I've had people write forwards for me. I had Jack Canfield wrote a forward for her. Also, I noticed in Women Who Impact, Lisa Nichols, who is a phenomenal speaker, she wrote a forward for her. She said, "You know what? I think I want to put yours as a forward to our entire book." And I realized a few things. So first of all, I started to realize self-reflection. So I always tell people this. I would, if this was the perfect movie that I was directing and we wanted to have the happy ending, or I also mentioned my favorite Hallmark Christmas movie where I say, "Cue the snow," and we live happily ever after, I would tell all of you that what I did, everything I did that led up to 16 film festivals, 16 awards, a #1 international best-selling book, all of the accolades and nominations and appearances that came with it, that led me to finally get that tenure position at that one university that I'd been working at since 2007. And so that's where you all give me applause and say, "Yay, she finally got it. Perfect ending. I would see that movie in a heartbeat." But no, that didn't happen. However, here's what happened to me. What happened to me is, you know about the other things, but what happened to me was because of my screenplay, that's what they call it now, because of my screenplay that I wrote for this documentary, I was accepted into the Writers Guild of America, West. So there's an East Coast too. That is the premier guild for all entertainment writers. So think of your favorite movie, think of your favorite show, think of that writer. They're in that guild. So, and I had, because that guild is in Los Angeles next to what you might have heard, the Farmers Market or the Grove in LA. Just think of it as your Mecca here in Iowa City. It's a beautiful building, like Film Scene. I showed a film at Film Scene, and that building is gorgeous. That's what the Writers Guild of America, and I would look at that as a little girl and think, that's such a nice building. Well, this documentary got me into that premier guild for all entertainment writers. It got me a film that I only was just hoping for would be screened at universities and colleges. It got me a film that's streaming on Amazon.com. And if you're a Prime member, you get it free. But what it's done really is that it's actually humbled me to a point of listening to some of the stories that I get told about. First one, actually, I had a lot of stories, but this one actually happened yesterday at the University of Iowa. A woman told me that her mother, who grew up in the Midwest, went to the South and she saw a lady come in, and I believe she might have said the lady was pregnant, but for some reason she realized that she should give up her seat because she felt that the person needed the seat more than her, a black lady, and she went to give up the seat. And what happened was, not only did her mother get kicked off the bus, but so did the lady, because she didn't know. And so what that told me is that, and I learned this even from learning about Cousin Rosie's life, is that we can all make a difference. We think about things like this because her mother made a difference that day. She showed that lady that we're all just part of the human race. Another thing that I did too is that I showed America that Cousin Rosie, one of her true philosophies is that she believed in human rights. She believed that it doesn't matter what your race or your gender is that you should be treated with respect. A lot of people just don't realize that her passion was for all of us. It doesn't matter what our race or gender is. And so these are things that I would have never been able to accomplish if I probably took that tenure track. Because what happened to me is it gave me the freedom to move on. So one little paragraph more. Our life's moments are designed to help us change our thinking as we fulfill our goals. In my case, I had to change my thinking and climb out of the emotional pit that I had dug for myself. When I did, I created a tribute to one of America's most beloved heroines that will forever change how she is viewed by national and international audiences. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is on? Okay. We have a few minutes for questions. I'm going to do it with the mic, so if you have a question, could you raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
When I read your brief biography in the brochure for the book festival, I looked at, like the list of these things that you've done, and I just marveled at, like, how do you make such leaps from one field to another? Like, I know people change jobs in the modern world, but you kind of have gone way beyond that and really, really made any field you chose a success for you. How do you do that?
I don't know. I could tell you there were two things I wanted to do when I was growing up, and one was to work in entertainment. I knew that I wanted to be a producer. Like I said, I admired Oprah Winfrey, but I also, because my parents, even though they are in Southern California, they have actually retired to Las Vegas, but they both grew up in the South. So they had always told me that without education, that I wouldn't be able to go where I wanted. So there was always this love for education. When I started going to college is when I realized, because so many wonderful professors had made an impact on my life, I knew that was my second desire, is that I wanted to be a college professor one day. So I don't know if it's just because I held on to those two desires that I was able to, but I think in my mind I thought I would be able to, because I'm giving you guys all, the small version of it all, but I don't think I ever considered the journeys that it would take to get to those. And so what I'm learning now is that whatever I decide to do next, which I'm good where I'm at, whatever I decide to do next is to really look around that journey, because it's that journey that helped open the doors for me to get where I wanted to be. So thank you so much. That was really encouraging. Thank you.
You were
Yeah.
first.
And you can ask me about the book, you can ask me about the documentary, you can ask me about me. It's okay.
So I'm just curious, what was your dissertation?
Okay, it was way too long, but it was on older adults learning social media. Okay, this was back in 2014. So this is back in 2014. And nonprofit organizations, what they can do to help them, because my doctoral degree is in human services, but it's with an emphasis in nonprofit agencies. And one of the things I realized was, as older adults, as they got older, you're not as mobile, but you still wanted to be connected. And being a PEO and seeing a lot of women that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and we even have a couple of ones that hit hundreds and still moving, I knew that that was important. So I focused on that. So at the time, it was pretty groundbreaking to a point where I had to do a pilot study. So I used a local PEO group to help me do my pilot study. But I was doing that dissertation in hopes, which I did do, of creating social media classes. So I created social media classes for that university in Orange County, and intro to social media and advanced strategies. But it was a fun dissertation. I enjoyed it. I went to every senior center around my like 10-mile radius. It was incredible.
Are you going to pursue screenwriting, documentary filmmaking, or what's your next act?
That's a great question. Okay, so two things that will be happening. First, I actually announced this on Facebook yesterday. When I went to Mount Pleasant to be part of that Belle Babb Mansfield symposium, I was incredibly moved by Belle, because she used her law degree not to practice law, but to educate and be a pioneer in women's suffrage. And so I asked Iowa Wesleyan University, I asked the committee over the symposium, and I asked the town of Mount Pleasant, would they help me do a documentary? And they said yes. And so that is my next documentary. So I will actually be back in March just for the symposium, but I'll come back in May and shoot in Mount Pleasant. And I spent some time in the University of Iowa's the Women Archives, and I'll be back there too. So I think it's perfect timing. 2020 is, a lot of things are happening, but it's also the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. So that's why I tell people, sometimes we limit ourselves with what we want to do. I thought I could just only educate in the classroom, But what I'm finding is that I can use a love that I have of video and educate a lot more people and not grade papers. So, and I'm not closing the door on that. Oh, some people clap. Oh, instructors in here and professors. So that's my next documentary. And then to complement the educational series for, how do I get back here? For My Life with Rosie, to complement that, it went back into the edit bay because originally it was just supposed to go to education. So at the end of each segment, so once you look at the documentary, you'll see that each segment has a title on it. But at the end, I actually created it's called Stop, Think, Act for instructors in a discussion question that had to do with the previous segment so that you could stop it, ask questions, discuss. And so that was what it was originally supposed to be. But when I decided I would go into the film festival run, my editor and composer said, you got to get rid of that because they're not going to want to stop, think, act in a film festival. So the editor has actually gone back and he is creating this documentary for its original intention, breaking it up into 3 parts. But I never thought about primary education, so that, because it's 64 minutes. I should have told you that. It's 64 minutes. So in 3 parts, at least you can do it in 1 class period, do it the next day. Well, a friend from high school invited me to talk to her 2nd grade class, and I actually showed them this segment with my cousins and my aunts on the bus, and they really took to it. So I didn't have anything for primary education. So one of the things that Kate Butler Books will be doing, or I will be writing and she will be publishing for me, is that I will be doing a children's book called My Life with Rosie. And that, okay, so I need good thoughts from everybody because its projected release is February 4th, 2020, and that's Rosa Parks. I believe it would be like her 117th or 117th birthday. So I really want to shoot for that goal. So those are my 2 projects, and you know I have to have some money coming in. So I do still adjunct teach online, and believe it or not, I teach a public speaking class because I think it's good for me.
I believe that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Was the family really united around your vision immediately, or did you encounter challenges behind what you were doing as you went along?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so the aunts, that's what I call them. Aunt Carolyn, Aunt Loretta, Aunt Alice, and Aunt Barbara, completely supportive, and that was important to me. So, and remember, I'm an in-law, so they were completely supportive. I will tell you that one of the cousins when we were actually at Henry Ford said, are you really going to get this done? So I don't think they thought I would ever finish it. And so it was interesting because I would tell family, I was so excited, I'm working on this documentary at Rosa Parks. And they would just pat me on the back, look, that's nice. But then when it started going into film festivals and winning, they're like, oh my gosh, this is my cousin. Look, I'm like, okay. So I don't think they weren't hostile to me, but I don't think they ever thought I would finish that. I mean, because they figured at some point I had to run out of speed. And so I really shocked them. And I mean, all of a sudden, even though I am an in-law, I'm treated like I'm a blood relative. And here's the thing, I wanted it to get to Detroit because that's where Rosa Parks spent the last part of her life, and that's where Aunt Carolyn is today, and that's where I shot. So I actually got into Detroit's Trinity International Film Festival, and all the family came and they saw it. And I didn't know at the time, but it won the grand prize of that film festival too, along with Aunt Carolyn getting the humanitarian award from that film festival. So at that point, my husband's cousin did say to him that he married well after 20 years of being part of the family. So I think I'm accepted now. Great question, thank you. And then you had a second part? No?
Not necessarily, but I am going to look up your dissertation because I do tech help at the library for senior folks, and I want to
Oh my
learn
gosh.
everything
no,
you
no,
learned.
No, give me your card. I'll email
Yeah.
it to you.
I wanna hear it all.
Yeah, I'll email you the final one.
I would like a copy of the dissertation also.
Okay, grab business cards after and email me, and I'll email it to you. I did 9 months of data collection, people. So I thought, oh my gosh, I probably could have had another child by this point, but I had a dissertation. So yes, if you want that, please, I have cards, grab them, email me. I'm more than happy to share it.
Also, have you met Oprah?
No, not yet, not yet. But one day, I hope. I feel so good. I mean, Rosie, I think, was really what I needed to just get, it's like my calling card. But I feel so positive about this next documentary on Belle. And it's just the energy of the town, the energy of the university. I told them yesterday, I had a pre-production meeting there yesterday because I'm here, I might as well do it. And I told them, I said, you know what? I hope that this is my first Academy Award. You know, I don't mind getting my first one after 50, but if I do get it, you guys are all coming down to California. So maybe if Belle goes the way I really want it to go, maybe I'll meet her. Because, yeah. And I almost went to her university because I loved her so much, but at the end, and you might, if you have children, you might have experienced this. At the end, I'm like, no, I just want to stay close to home, close to mom. So yeah, I just love that lady.
You know, I saw the documentary the other night, and I find it profoundly moving, especially the section that's on the actual bus with the family. That was really inspired to put them in that setting. But one of the things that you do in the documentary is it's a tribute to Rosa Parks, but also to Carolyn Green. And it seems like Rosa Parks comes from a whole family of activists. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the public service and activism of other members of her family.
So I focused on Aunt Carolyn just because of my relationship with Aunt Carolyn. One of the things that I should really, and I wasn't able to say this in the documentary, but I said this when I was speaking at the Iowa Women's Foundation on Thursday, is that when cousin Rosie came to Detroit, because she did not have children of her own, so she never had children, she brought that philosophy with her. So what she did was she mentored her younger cousins. So because cousin Rosie did that and mentored Aunt Carolyn and mentored Aunt Alice and Aunt Loretta and Aunt Barbara, they've all done a lot of different things. Aunt Barbara was actually, until she retired and moved to Houston, she was in Los Angeles, so she would host cousin Rosie when cousin Rosie would come out to LA to stay during the long winters. And so she does her things around there too. But I will tell you, Aunt Carolyn is probably the one that does a lot more, because at the end, Aunt Carolyn spent a lot more time with cousin Rosie. But I have other cousins who have, a lot of them have gone into not higher ed, but primary and secondary education, because they feel the education system is so important. And that was one of the things that they say Rosa Parks regretted, was that she was never able to get a bachelor's degree or anything like that. And as far as I know, she never even received an honorary degree or anything like that. So I think the family going forward with that, but another thing we all have to also wrap around our minds too, this was just still a cousin. I mean, even when they had to move her from Alabama to Detroit, they weren't saying, oh, we're moving, you know, this mother of the civil rights movement. They weren't thinking that. They're saying, we're moving our cousin because she's getting death threats on a daily basis and cannot sleep. So they just always looked at her like that. So she felt like normal in that family, but she still instilled the activist traits to those cousins because she knew that she needed to leave a legacy somehow.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, well, we're out of time anyway, so thank you so much, Dr.
my
Dr.
pleasure.
Williamson. And you are signing books.
Yes.
Fairy Lights has Women Who Illuminate on the table out there, and you can buy a copy and get it autographed.
Yes.
So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.